Configuring Fortigate SSL portals. Client VPN. In this video, we will see how we can configure our Fortigate as an SSL portal. This will allow us to give our employees ability to work remotely and still have access to the internal resources in the company. An SSL portal establishes a secured encrypted tunnel between the Fortigate firewall and your remote user internet connection and allow your users to be part of your internal network and have access to your internal resources while being remotely working or under work travel. And the difference between IPsec VPN and SSL VPN is that IPsec VPN allows you to connect services together, or servers to server, or whole network to whole network. But in SSL portals, you're allowing single users to tunnel into your network and get access to your internal resources while being secured over the internet, so no data is exposed even if they were not using HTTPS or any encryption inside. Under SSL VPN portals, we will see different modes for our access. First, let's check our full access profile. And under full access, we have different options we can configure in our tunnel. First, we have our tunnel mode, and the tunnel mode allows you to have a complete ESP connection to your environment and have the best performance and low latency access to your internal resources. And under tunnel mode, you can enable split tunneling. And split tunneling is a feature that allows you to route specific traffic to the VPN tunnel and route all the other traffic outside the VPN tunnel. For example, if you are logging remotely to your company resources and then you are trying to access google.com, the firewall will detect that google.com does not have an IP address that belongs to this routing address in here, and therefore will decide to route from your own home internet connection or your cell phone connection and have only the private traffic that belongs to organization go this way. So this is useful if you are running multiple sites and have different proxy servers and other security control on each site. You can enable only the unique traffic to be routed to the VPN tunnel and have all the internet and other traffic route through the other proxy for lower latency. But if you are running a centralized proxy server and security controls, you do not want to enable split tunneling, because if you do, you will lose visibility into all your public traffic and have no security controls whatsoever on which websites your employees are opening. So in this case, we will enable split tunneling for this network, and we have set our source IP pool. These are the IPs that will be given to the users once they are in the tunnel mode. So even though they are connected to the internet, they have a secured encrypted channel from their internet connection to our VPN interface, and then the traffic will be internally routed normally like you are directly connected to the network. Under here, we can have different options for the client, like saving the password or automatic login or never timeout. And we can also run DNS split tunneling. And assuming you are running multiple DNS systems on different DNS domains, you can use this to enable specific DNS domain queries to go to a specific DNS server. This way you make sure your clients are able to resolve all your internal domains without having an issue. We can also create a specific domain for your internal network, have it routed to your internal DNS, and have all the public traffic go to a public DNS server. For now, we are not running any internal DNS system, so we can disable this option. If for some reason the tunnel mode, which is operating on ESP, so it uses port 4500 UDP, and also it uses TLS or HTTPS to initiate the connection in the beginning and exchange username and password. So for some reason, port 4500 had failed because of a firewall block or for another reason, you will be given an access to the web mode, which is a limited access, only works from the browser and allows you to proxy your requests into your environment. So it has very limited functionality and it doesn't work as fast as the tunnel mode works, but we can also give it a title. We call this employee portals. You can change your theme and you can show the user their session information, a connection launcher to download the Forti client, and the Forti client will allow you to get into the tunnel mode and have the full functionality. And Forti client can be downloaded on Windows, on Mac OS, or on your Android or iPhone as well. You can also add predefined bookmarks. For example, you can give a bookmark for your company resource. In this way, you have your company homepage directly attached to your SSL portal, so users can click in here and just get your company home. You can add multiple links, and this will give you users easy bookmarks to get or to quickly navigate into your company resources. Finally, we hit OK, and we also have limited access option, which is called web access. We can rename this to no access, and we have all their options is disabled. Now we have a portal for our full access users, which is our employees, and we also have a no access profile, which doesn't allow anything, and this will be applicable to all other users. Now let's see what else we can configure under SSL VPN settings. And under SSL VPN settings, you can configure your interface. This will be the internet connection interface, and you can configure your listener port. And this cannot overlap with your HTTPS management itself. If you are managing the firewall with port 8443, you cannot use the same port for the SSL portal because the firewall will not be able to route your request to which service. Once I change the number to a unique port, I have no issue using port 40,000 to access my SSL portal. Now we can choose to restrict the access from a specific host or to allow it from the whole internet. We need to allow this to everything. And finally, this will idle out in 8 hours. We need to make this less to lower the load on the Fortigate. So we will leave it only 5 minutes. If you don't use the service, you will be kicked out of the connection. Finally, you can configure your server certificate. And this must be installed in your end users' devices to make sure that they can access the HTTPS website without seeing errors. You can also set up a two-way TLS by enabling also client certificate to be verified before allowing access to your internal resources. And finally, for our tunnel mode, this is the full access mode that requires the Forti client to be installed and connects over ESP. We will be using 192.168.254.0/24. So once the clients get connected to our VPN, you will be given a single IP address from this range, and they will be internally connected to our network as if they were directly attached to our network. And for portal mapping, we define which user gets the full access portal and which users are given the no access portal. From here, we can create a new authentication portal. We can create a new group for our remote users, and we're just gonna call this remote. And we can either define individual users or actual remote groups from an LDAP server. Once we add our user to the group, we can select this group and specifically choose which portal we want to give. We hit OK. And now we have different authentication portals configured on our firewall. So once we hit OK, these settings will be saved, and it's warning us about the internal certificate might give issues to the client. So that's where you have to download the certificate onto your endpoint clients, or you could also use a public certificate that is from a trusted CA, and this way you don't get this error. Now that we have our clients connected, let's try to access our portal first by going into my host name and choose the port 40,000. And once I get into here, as expected, I'm getting the certificate error because this is using the internal certificate of the firewall. And because we enabled the web mode, we are given this access. We are also given access to launch the Forti client, which allows us to connect on the ESP mode. And now we are connected using the web mode on an HTTPS session. This is our session timer, upstream, downstream metrics, and our username. We see options to download or launch the Forti client, and we see the company bookmarks that we added in the SSL portal page. And finally, we can create new bookmarks applicable to only our username. We can have a quick connection where we can specifically access these services. And this is where the limitation comes from. We can only access specific services from the browser versus the tunnel mode where we are able to access any service. So first, let's try to ping something. And I want to ping one of my internal resources. For example, I want to ping this firewall IP that is not exposed to the internet. But first, we need to make sure that we have a policy to allow this traffic to go through. And for the policy, we need to enable our incoming interface to be the SSL termination point, which is called SSL the truth by default. And the destination interface will be LAN, where our private resources live. We will enable the whole CIDR mask of our VPN, which is 192.168.254.0/24. We also have to mention which users in the same source to allow this user to access through the VPN interface. And the destination will be our internal network with no restriction, with all ports enabled. And finally, we hit OK, and this will save our policy. And if I launch, it says 192.168.1.99 is reachable. Now let's try something different, and let's try to HTTP session to one of our internal resources. So now that I'm accessing through the internet, if I try to access an internal IP address 192.168.1.127, this is an internal web server that is not exposed to the internet. And if we click launch, now we have access to our internal resource. And if you notice, I'm just being proxied into my internal server through the internet. And the channel itself is HTTPS, so everything is encrypted. Nothing is being exposed to the internet. Now also, from here we can start a new connection and have SFTP server or RDP. Let's try to RDP into our Windows client. So we can use this as a bastion host to connect to an RDP Windows server, and from the Windows server we can access other resources as well. So first I will put the IP address of my Windows server, and it's using the standard RDP port. And now I put my username and password to log in into my Windows server. I want to use a TLS encryption to make sure that my connection to the server is encrypted as well. Also, it's good to know that the newer versions of Windows Server only allow TLS encryptions to go through. And we can click launch. And as we see in here, we have been given a direct RDP access from the browser to our internal Windows Server, and we didn't even have to log in. We can also use this to do clipboard moving text in between or writing big code in between. And we can also send Control-Alt-Delete from the browser. So this is very useful if you want to configure your Windows client as a bastion host. You can access the RDP session from here and then access whatever internal resources you need. And to confirm, this is my internal IP address on the Ethernet adapter, and there is no public IPs assigned in here. I'm just connected to my Windows server through a proxy on the browser. Now we can also SSH directly from the proxy. Now I put my username and the IP address of my instance, and if I try to launch, now I'm given access to my internal resources. If I put my password in here, I'm now given access to my SSH session directly from the browser. So now we tested different services on our web mode. We've seen that we can use this for specific services such as web browsing, FTP or SFTP, RDP, VNC, different services that can give you quick access to internal resources without much configuration. Now for best performance, you need to download the Fortigate client on a different machine and connect to the specific IP address. First, it will establish the TLS to exchange the username and password over port 40,000. And then we'll establish another tunnel on port 4500 using ESP, and will give you full functionality without having to use the browser for everything. You can use Forti, or you can use any other service, or you can use your normal web browser without having to go through this built-in page. Now we can also do the same from our mobile devices. As the Forti client is available for different platforms, we can download for iOS or Android. Now let's try to demo the connection to our environment using the FortiClient on an Android cell phone. First, we will search for FortiClient VPN on our App Store. And once we open this, it's gonna tell us that this is a limited version because it's free. And it's gonna ask us to add access to our internal resource. And once we open the FortiClient VPN application, we can create a new VPN. And we can choose SSL VPN. This is what we just configured. First, we need to add our server URL. So I added elasticcourse.fortiddns.com. We need to change the port from 443 to our SSL VPN portal port, which is 40,000. We can enable a certificate if we requested a certificate check on the settings. And we can also disable our check server certificate. And now we have all the information we need. If we try to connect, it's going to ask for the password. Once we add the password, we can hit login. And now I have an IP address 192.168.254.1. And now from the browser, I'm able to access 192.168.1.99, even though I am in 4G, so I'm not connected to my internal network at all. I'm accessing this through my VPN connection. And I can access my internal resource from my remote system. I can also access my internal web server 192.168.1.127 without an issue from my cell phone. Once I'm done with my session, I can open the client from the top bar and I can choose to disconnect my session. Or if I get idle for 5 minutes, which is our timeout value on the SSL VPN settings, it will kick me out automatically. And that's how you configure SSL VPN portals on Fortigate Firewall. Thank you for watching.